Hi, I'm Wes Allen with DM Tales, and today I am talking about a newer game that people are really excited about. This is my look at EZD6. Let's roll it. EZD6 is 116 pages, so it's not too thick. It is available print on demand through DriveThruRPG. Because it is print on demand, it is flat paper, which I really appreciate. Comes in at basically 1/2 US letter size, so it would be 5.5 across and 8.5 down. Not quite the digest size of Old School Essentials, but it's still very luggable. It fits in a bag and it gets out of the way. Very nice. I'm a big fan. There is a hardback version available, but softbound is plenty good for a book this size and this weight. Its layout is very nice. There's a nice serif font for the text and a blocky serif font, really good weight for the headers. Each page has a huge header, which I'm not entirely a huge fan of. I almost think that it breaks a little bit too many conventions, but it is really easy to see what section of the book you're in just by looking at the header. So I'm going to suspend my opinion on that. The page text has a nice border going around the edge, but what really comes out is the page number block, literally a block in the corner of each of the pages. It's really stylish, and I normally don't go in for huge flourishes like this, but it just fits the game, and I really enjoy it. There aren't many tables in the game, but the ones that do exist are easy to read. Really good header, a nice border separating them, and alternating row colors, which is something I'm always a huge fan of. One of the coolest features of the book are DM Scotty's callouts. They're bold. It switches to a comic-style font, so you feel as though you're reading a comic book. It's very inviting. Cool comic drawing of DM Scotty there. And this is information that's meant for either players or the Rabble Rouser to help them run the game better and feel better about playing this game. It's cool, and it lends the impression that this book is a conversation with the person who is reading it. Very well done. The artwork in the book is all pencil-style drawings, and it ranges from the slightly creepy to the incredibly silly, and it all fits the game perfectly. I am a big fan, and if you don't do anything else with the book, simply getting it to page through the artwork is a joy. The writing style for EZD6 is really conversational, and in a good way, because this makes the text a lot easier to read. You really feel as though DM Scotty is talking to you at a table, explaining to you the rules of the game. The bad part of this, however, is that sometimes important information is buried inside the text, such as knowing what number a creature needs to hit the character during combat. It's not hard to find. The game's not all that long, but because it's not bolded or put into a bullet list or just otherwise identified, it can be a little bit harder to pick up on. Part of the conversational tone of the book does bring some editing quirks. On page 14, when it's talking about spells and miracles, there's a little bit of text there that looks like it's almost been left as a filler text where a header just could have really been used. Rules for spellcasting and calling on miracles are detailed here. It just needs a header. It doesn't need to have a description of what's in the block. Little things like that appear inside the text. Occasionally, information is going to be repeated from one paragraph to the next because of the conversational nature of the writing. All in all, it's a good and an easy read. And this is a book I actually find myself picking up and just paging through to see what DM Scotty is saying. It's fun. There's this statement that simplicity is the essence of elegance, and that's EZD6 to a T. Everything is broken down to a D6 roll. If you have a boon on something, you get to roll another dice when you're doing your check, and you take the higher. So it's kind of like advantage in 5e. If you have a bane, you roll 2 dice and you take the lower number, like disadvantage in 5e. The person running the game, called the Rabble Rouser, sets the target and you roll. If you equal that number or exceed it, you succeed. If not, you fail. A 1 is always a failure, and a 6 is always a success. Real simple mechanics. I'm a big fan. And that's basically the engine in a nutshell. But your rolls can be altered. I've already talked about boons and banes, but there are other ways you can adjust your rolls as well. The biggest of these is karma. Now, I'm a fan of the old Marvel Superheroes game from the 80s, and karma was a big thing in that game. You could spend your karma points to increase your roll to make it that you got a success instead of a failure. Pretty much the same thing here in EZD6, although you don't have quite as large a pool in order to do it. You start off a game with 3 karma points, typically, and you may add a karma point, or more than one, to a roll, and maybe get a success instead of a failure. That's pretty cool. And if you ever fail a roll, you actually get 1 extra karma point. So there might be times where you strategically want to fail a challenge in order to stockpile karma for later on, if you think your character can survive. This is part of the strategy of the game. Characters also start the game with 1 hero die, which basically means you can wipe out 1 die and roll it with the hero die instead, taking that number. There are, however, a couple of rolls that you cannot use karma for, and these would be spells and miracles, because these things are so unpredictable. The forces of magic are so chaotic, and the gods in the worlds of EZD6 are so aloof that simply spending your karma is not going to get these things under your control. And magic is completely reworked in this game. There are no spell lists to look at. This is an ongoing feature of EZD6. Take out the fiddly bits and just play the game. Instead, there are 9 circles of sorcery, which a person who is a conjurer is able to choose from, and these create the types of effects that that character is able to use. You're using these elements in order to cast a spell, but the spell itself is left up to the character, narrating what they want to do with these abilities. When they cast, they're able to choose their power level from 1d6 to 3d6. And you would think, well, why aren't you always casting on 3d6? At least you should be. And the reason why is because if any of those power dice actually rolls a 1, the spell automatically fizzles, unless you spend karma, that is. And when you cast a spell, the object that you are casting it on, whether it be a creature who is hostile, an inanimate object, or a friendly creature, they have spell resistance. Typically, it's 3d6. So they're rolling to get the number that the conjurer has to beat. The highest of those 3d6 is what the challenge number is. Really cool, very fast. It gives conjurers this ability to narrate the game as they see it in their mind's eye and to come up with their own description of what these magical abilities do. Miracles work in the same way. You can roll from 1d6 to 3d6. This marks the urgency of your prayer, and it's the same thing. If you roll a 1, that prayer fails. But a friar character is able to make a reroll if they make an offering. DM Scotty points out that friar characters will often do this at the beginning of the day rather than in the moment. So they know that this offering has been accepted. It has to be something of value. So you can't just say, well, I'm going to give you my gratitude today. It's got to be a significant offering. Like, here's my favorite dagger. I'm going to give this to you. Let me re-roll a prayer die today. That's the way that the mechanic works. If you succeed, you get it. And if not, oh well, you only get to ask for a miracle 1 time. The challenge number is determined by a roll of 1d6 all the way up to 66, depending on the nature of the miracle. DM Scotty always points out that if you want to raise a character from the dead, well, that's a 66 that you're going to have to beat. If you just want to talk to the dead, well, you know, the gods might not be paying attention, so a 3d6, but it's a lot easier to get to. In combat, most creatures need a 3 or up on their d6 roll in order to hit the PCs. And characters do not get a boatload of hit points, they get 3 strikes. 3 strikes and you are out. Gotta love the baseball reference there. However, the hero paths of the game, which is what classes are called in EZD6, are allowed to make armor saves. This is based on the armor type that their hero path gives them. If you make an armor save, you are able to erase 1 strike that is made against you. For a heavily armored character, that roll is 4 and up. For a medium armored character, it's 5 and up, And for a light armor character, it's just a 6. So you have this opportunity to erase strikes that are made against you, and you narrate this in the combat. How are you blocking the strike off? Is your armor taking the blow? Are you parrying it with your sword or your spear? Or is your shield coming up and blocking a strike that would have stabbed you through the heart? This is the way this game works. Really, really fast. Cool dice rolls, and there's a lot weighing on each roll. It's not just this frivolous roll over and over and over again. I like this. It seems like it'd be a lot of fun. Now, instead of saving throws, which other games have, you have what's called a miraculous save. Typically, for most of your hero paths, this is going to be rolling a 6 on a d6. You can use karma, and you can also use your hero die. This is for things that would bring you to utter and certain death, like a dragon breathes acid on you, or the entire tunnel collapse. You roll a miraculous save in order to escape that damage entirely, or maybe just take one strike instead of instant death. Again, just like with everything else in EZD6, everything is streamlined with a lot of weight on the roll. Love it. Creatures have numbers to hit. Typically it's a 3, but for some heavily armored creatures, it's going to be a 4 or up. And every time you hit, you do one strike. So there's none of this variable damage for everything. However, if you roll a 6 on your attack, you can now crit. And you roll another dice. You can use karma in order to bolster your number. If you roll a 6, adjusted or natural, you now confirm the crit and you are able to do 2 strikes. But even better, then you get to roll again. And if you roll a 6 that time, you can do 3 strikes. If you keep confirming the crit over and over again, think of it as this flurry of blows that is coming against this creature and just slashing it into pieces. It makes the idea of doing a critical attack on a creature be so much more exciting, because how long can I keep the chain going? Do I have enough karma to take this creature out entirely? Am I going to be able to roll enough 6s so that I can do this? It's really cool. I can't wait to try this out sometime. Characters in this game are called pushers and shovers, which I think is how DM Scotty thinks of the characters in the game. They're pushing my patience and they're shoving all the stuff around my adventure. It's really nice. There are 9 hero paths in the game with a good mix of straight martial and hybrid classes. They give you your list of skills that you would have boons on and anything that you would have a bane on. The number of strikes that you have, because some character hero paths do have a few more strikes than just 3. And they tell you what extra skills you can choose from in order to get an extra boon. So it's very simple, it's put together well, and there's this nice mix of characters to choose from. There's 5 species in the game. You have the 4 classic: human, dwarf, halfling, and elf, but they also add goblins to the mix in this game. So if you've ever wanted to play a goblin, literally a dice goblin in this case, you can do that in EZD6. And some of their abilities are really cool. Like, they can hide and just not take any damage in a round. It's impossible for them because they just blend into the shadows. And then they pop out and like, haha, I'm here. Whack. That's a technical term. Whack. So each non-human race does get some special abilities, like the goblin. The human's big trait is that they get an extra aspect to their character. Most PCs will get 2, humans get 3. But this is a pretty big deal, because your extra aspect can be anything from more karma to another skill that you get a boon on, able to roll a dice and take the bigger number. So it puts humans on equal footing even with these other races that do have some special abilities. Equipment is likewise streamlined. You roll on a series of tables in order to see what you get, because the fiddly bits of keeping track of your inventory is not as important as how the player narrates using them. This is a very strong narrative game with a heavy dice roll mechanic where the dice have a lot of weight. I've not seen a game like this before. I'm really fascinated by it. The GM of this game is called a Rabble Rouser, and inside the Rabble Rouser section of the book, there is some simple advice for running the game. There is a monster bestiary with both classic monsters and some really freaky, unique monsters to EZD6 that has some more background information because they haven't appeared anywhere else. These monsters are really wild, very cool, a little bit disturbing, and I want them in my other games. I'm going to have to try to figure out a way to stat them out. And because there's no character advancement in this game, one of the ways that you're going to beef up your characters is by giving them magic items. But the magic items are not simply +1 to do this, +2 to do that. There are abilities to the items, and there's a roll table in the back of the book to try to build the magic item out for your PCs. They can be very, very powerful, and I love them. It adds to the chaos of the game. So if you haven't picked up on it by now, I'm a big fan of this game. It is cool. It is fast. It is narrative driven, but dice heavy. I've never seen anything like it. The dice mean something. Your player's narration of the game means something. It's all built together. But the amazing thing about it is, as you're rolling all these dice, they just get out of the way so that you can play. It's really cool. I highly recommend trying out EZD6, and I can't wait to run a session of it sometime soon. It might be the most perfect pick up and play one-shot adventure game that has ever been developed. And that's not even taking into account that you could easily play a long-running campaign with this system and have a boatload of fun. You can currently pick up EZD6 at DriveThruRPG. If you just want the PDF, it is $12.50. A softbound plus PDF combination is going to be $22.50, which is what I got. The hardbound book with the combination PDF is going to cost $25. This is not going to break the bank. It is a great value. It has everything you need in the game, and I think it's utterly fantastic. Really well done, Dan Scotty. Thank you for making this product. So if you are still watching this video, may I take a moment to encourage you to like or comment or subscribe to the channel. It gives me a lot of feedback. It helps the channel grow because more people are seeing it, and it makes me want to make more of these amazing videos to share what's going on in the tabletop role-playing game space. Thanks a lot. So a few months back, I backed a Kickstarter for a game called Brindlewood Bay, which is a combination of Murder, She Wrote with the Cthulhu mythos. It was a really strange idea, and it seemed intriguing to me, something that I might be able to get my neighbors to play with me. And this month, I was able to get the PDF of the book, and that's what I'm going to be reviewing next week. Until then, happy playing, everyone.